A man sits alone in a dark room, bleeding from his own hands. Not from a fight, but from training so hard he simply didn't stop. He is wanted by every law enforcement agency on the planet. He single-handedly dismantled over 20 criminal syndicates. And right now, the most dangerous man alive is quietly falling apart. His name is Frank Castle, and he's already decided he wants to die. Before we get into what happens next, we need to talk about why. It didn't start with violence. It started with a perfect afternoon. Frank, his wife, his children, laughing together at an amusement park. Sunlight, popcorn, the kind of memory you'd give anything to hold on to forever. But 3 rival gangs chose that same afternoon to execute a massive cocaine deal in the same location. When the shooting started, it didn't stop until everyone was dead. Everyone, including Frank's family. He watched them die, right in front of him. What came next wasn't justice. It was something much darker. Frank hunted every single person responsible, every lieutenant, every enforcer, every kingpin, and he killed them all. Then he kept going. He expanded the war to the entire criminal underworld, becoming a one-man purge of every syndicate operating in the city. The world called him the Punisher. The law called him the most dangerous fugitive alive. But here's the thing no one talks about. After all that blood, the emptiness didn't go away. Frank now lives in hiding inside the Sicilian Quarter, a crime-ridden neighborhood so lawless that even the police don't dare enter. He's grown a thick beard. He moves like a ghost. And every morning, he stares at a wall covered in photographs. Every face from those 3 syndicates, all of them crossed out in red ink. One day, something inside him snaps. He tears the wall apart with his bare hands. Because he finally admits what he's been trying to deny. The slaughter changed nothing. His wife and children are still gone. The void inside him is still there. And no amount of bodies is going to fill it. Outside his window, the city is bleeding. Without the Punisher watching, the syndicates have flooded back. On a filthy street corner, 4 thugs attack a homeless man without a single reason. One of them grabs the man's dog, his only companion, and hurls it into the path of a speeding car. As the old man collapses in tears, he calls out to the empty street. He begs for the Punisher to come back, but Frank has given up. He's not fighting anymore. The criminals know it too. They've come out of hiding in force. Inside his apartment, Frank begins to hallucinate. He sees his fallen military brothers, men who died in service, standing over him. They're laughing at him, mocking the fact that all his revenge meant nothing. He imagines his closest friend, Kurt, appearing beside him, asking what's wrong. Frank breaks down completely. He weeps. He confesses that he can't survive this grief anymore, and he begs Kurt to end his life. But the hallucination delivers a truth Frank doesn't want to hear. All that killing hasn't cleansed him. It's poisoned him. And peace won't come until he finds a different path. So Frank makes a decision. He locks every weapon he owns inside a heavy chest, seals it with a padlock, and walks out into the world unarmed. He's going to try to let go. For a moment, it almost works. He blends into the crowded streets, a bearded ghost walking among the very criminals he once hunted, completely unrecognized. He steps into a diner for coffee. The television is on. A news anchor warns that the Gnucci gang, one of the most powerful syndicates in the city, has deployed hit squads. They're hunting the Punisher, seeking revenge for their slain kingpin and his 3 sons. Frank pays for his coffee, quiet, unbothered, but the diner owner's daughter sees him. She recognizes the hard lines of his face from before the beard. She knows exactly who he is, and she says nothing, because to her, this man isn't a fugitive. He's a hero. Back on the pavement, Frank walks past thugs openly assaulting people on the street. He forces himself to keep moving. He made a vow. No more fighting. He ends up at the cemetery. Kneeling in the dirt before his family's graves, Frank placed the key to his weapons chest on his wife's headstone. He whispers that the killing is over. He hopes, desperately, painfully, that surrendering the war will finally give him some peace. It doesn't. He presses his service pistol against his own skin, ready to pull the trigger, and then he sees her, his little girl, standing right in front of him, smiling, telling him she loves him, whispering goodbye. The vision shatters him, And then it changes him, because he realizes this isn't permission, this is a sign, not an ending, a warning. He gets up. He walks away from the graves, but the city isn't done with him yet. A sleek black car has been following him. It stops. An old woman in a wheelchair rolls toward him, cold eyes, slow, deliberate movements, like someone who has been planning this moment for a long time. Her name is Ina, and she was the wife of the Gnucci kingpin. She looks Frank in the eyes and lays it all out without flinching. Her husband, executed. Her eldest son, a police officer, hunted down and killed. Her second son, ambushed outside a hotel alongside his wife and child. And her youngest boy, the one she watched die right in front of her. Frank doesn't deny a single word. They were arms dealers. They armed the gangs that slaughtered the innocent. He made a choice. Ina slowly forces herself up from the wheelchair, standing on shaking legs to face him directly. She calls him a psychotic monster, a destroyer of families. She tells him her hit squads are already deployed. At exactly 6:45 p.m., they will breach his apartment, they will kill him, and she will burn his body publicly. Then she turns and leaves. Frank walks back inside, completely unmoved. He's not afraid of death. He invited it, but then comes the hallucination of Karen, another close friend, another ghost from his past, and unlike Kurt's quiet sorrow, Karen is furious. She screams at him. She mocks his self-pity. She points at the chaos outside his window, innocent people being slaughtered while he sits in the dark, feeling sorry for himself. She grabs him, looks him in the eye, and tells him that he is the only person in this city who can stop it. Frank argues back. He shouts that his life died with his family, but the words ring hollow even as he says them. He knows she's right. He accepts his purpose again, and that's when they come. A heavy voice booms through the hallway. Nazi hitmen have already arrived, and they're not waiting until 6:45. They kick in the door of the single mother living next door, dragging her and her young son out as bait. Frank watches through the peephole, his hand on the knife at his belt, every instinct screaming. Then he hears something else, a liquid sound spreading beneath his own door. They're pouring gasoline. A match strikes. A wall of fire erupts. The flames climb Frank's leg, burning deep into the flesh. Grimacing, he thinks about letting it happen. Maybe this is the exit he's been waiting for. Then the little boy next door screams for someone to save his mother. It sounds exactly like his own children. The switch flips. Frank shatters the burning door and steps into the hallway like something that cannot be killed. What follows is controlled carnage. Frank moves through the Nazi hitmen with lethal efficiency. Knife to throat, body used as a human shield, rifle torn from dead hands and turned on the next attacker. A live stick of dynamite rolls into the room. Frank kicks it back out and shoves a wardrobe against the doorframe before the blast rips the hall apart. He reaches the balcony, looks down, and the situation completely spirals. The Nazi syndicate hasn't sent a hit squad. They've sent an army. Hundreds of armed mercenaries have occupied the entire Sicilian quarter. They're breaking into homes, executing civilians, setting fire to businesses. It's a full-scale operation to burn the neighborhood to the ground. And it's all meant for one man. Frank doesn't hesitate. He drops a shooter targeting an elderly man from the balcony, then leaps over the railing into the street below. He moves through the chaos like a force of nature, snapping necks, stripping weapons from corpses the moment his current gun runs dry, neutralizing snipers across the street with single, precise shots. Every time he runs out of ammunition, there's another weapon on the ground waiting for him. He clears the elevator. He clears the stairwell. He fights his way to the roof, but the Gnucci forces are already up there, flooding in from two separate entry points. Frank engages them from both sides simultaneously, a frantic, desperate two-front gunfight. His rifle runs dry at the worst possible moment. A high-caliber round tears through his left shoulder. He keeps going. Then, an iron bar cracks across his spine from behind. Two attackers open deep gashes in his leg. Bleeding badly, running on adrenaline and rage, Frank executes one with a point-blank shot, but the other drives his full weight into him, and both of them go over the edge. Frank plummets through the air. He crashes down onto the rooftop of the adjacent building, rolls, rises. Down on the street, he can see Ina watching from inside an armored vehicle, waiting to claim her trophy. He starts toward her, but he's out of ammunition, and 2 more mercenaries have him cornered. He makes a desperate leap off the building, crashing onto hanging scaffolding. Above him, a cartel soldier hurls a corpse down onto the structure. The beams shatter. Frank drops straight into the concrete. He gets up. Ina panics. She orders the retreat. Frank gives chase, but a scream pulls him sideways. It's coming from an alley nearby. The diner owner, the man who made his coffee. He's being beaten by 3 men while his daughter watches in horror. Frank pivots without hesitation. He intercepts a cartel scout on a motorcycle, shatters his helmet, and uses the rider's own pistol to execute the 3 men attacking the diner owner. The old man collapses into Frank's arms, bleeding and weeping, begging him to get inside. The rest of the gang is destroying the restaurant, and his wife and daughter are still in there. Frank enters through the front door. What comes next is a series of encounters that would have killed anyone else twice over. An enforcer drives an axe blade deep into Frank's shoulder. Frank tears it free and buries it in the man's chest. Another attacker gets his arm snapped in 2. Frank finishes him with a blade. He finds the owner's daughter and her mother hiding beneath a booth, sobbing, and then a giant steps out of the darkness. The man is a behemoth, massive, armed with a combat knife, and he goes straight for Frank's injured shoulder. The beating is savage. Frank hits the floor, vision blurring, barely conscious. He reaches desperately for anything he can use. His hand finds nothing but a plastic tray, and on that tray, a single office pen. As the giant lunges for the kill, Frank drives the pen into his flank, then grabs the steel chain around the man's neck and pulls him down, then drives the pen into his throat, over and over until the giant stops moving. The owner's wife weeps with relief. His daughter doesn't hesitate. She runs straight to Frank and holds him tight, whispering that she always knew the Punisher would come. The father stumbles in from the alley, bleeding, and wraps his arms around his family. He thanks God they're alive. Frank turns to slip away into the shadows. That's always been his way. But the little girl calls out to him. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a folded piece of paper. It's a drawing, a colorful flower. She holds it out to him, smiling, and explains she drew it especially for him. She was going to give it to him during his daily coffee run. Frank takes it. The diner owner steps forward, voice breaking, and begs Frank to stay, to protect them, to become the Punisher again. Frank says nothing. He turns and walks back into the night. But something has changed. The streets of the Sicilian quarter are quiet now. Word has spread impossibly fast. A single man dismantled the entire Nazi syndicate. The remaining criminals are fleeing in every direction. For the first time in years, Frank walks with his head up. The psychological fog that has been crushing him for so long begins to thin. He returns to the cemetery. Standing before his family's graves, he places the little girl's flower drawing on his daughter's headstone. He studies it for a long moment. He tells his family that the child from the diner reminded him of their daughter. He confesses everything, that the years since taking his revenge have been a waking nightmare, that the killing gave him nothing. But somewhere in the pain, he finally understands what it was all for. Not vengeance, defense. There are people in this world who cannot protect themselves, and he can. He reaches down and picks up the key to his weapons chest from his wife's headstone. He looks up at the sky. He swears an oath that he will never stop, that he will hunt down every syndicate, every predator, every monster hiding behind power and money, until the city is safe for good people to live in peace. He closes his eyes and whispers the last thing he always used to tell his little girl, that he loves her, until the end of time. The following afternoon feels like a different world. An elderly man walks hand in hand with his wife along a sunlit sidewalk, smiling as he promises to take her somewhere nice for lunch. It's an ordinary moment, the kind the city hasn't seen in years. Creeping up behind them is the young punk, the same bully who beat the homeless man and killed his dog. He raises a hockey stick, ready to shatter the moment from behind. A massive hand catches the stick mid-swing. Frank Castle, standing tall in full tactical gear. the skull on his chest facing forward. He's back. What he does next to the bully is deliberate and terrifying. Every bone rattled, every defense shattered, until the punk is pinned against the concrete with a razor-sharp blade pressed against his eye. Frank's voice, a low growl, promising a slow death if he ever touches another soul. And then the homeless man appears, running toward them from down the street. He sees the bully. He tells Frank everything: the beatings, his friends who were hurt, his dog thrown under a car. The punk scrambles to his feet and runs. Frank doesn't chase him. He draws a knife and throws it. It buries into the punk's calf with surgical precision, dropping him to the pavement 50 feet away. Frank walks over slowly, looks down at the screaming bully, then looks back at the homeless man. The old man nods. There's no hesitation in his eyes. Frank pulls the trigger. The Punisher stands over the body and makes a silent promise to every criminal still breathing in this city. The weak will walk these streets without fear. The innocent will sleep without terror. And anyone who preys on them